college and my context. Generally, in a high school setting, the classes would be organized more like what you have described. There would be a textbook that had been chosen by the school district or maybe the school for that particular grade. But of course, I'm a college teacher, so we have more personal choice. Academic freedom is what it's called, to make choices based on our decisions and our expertise. So there is a very there's a very serious list of objectives that I must follow to teach my students. But the material that I choose to use is my own choice. We have a list of textbooks that we as faculty members, as senior faculty members, have chosen that are good ones. We say this one works, this one works, this one works for this level. But actually, some teachers choose to use a slightly different textbook. They just can't use a textbook that's for a different level. Okay, so there's some more personal choice and more variety, I think. Also, another difference that might be important for you to know is that in my class, the classes that we teach 2 hours a day of reading, writing, and grammar, and 1 hour a day. This is college, so it's much fewer hours. 1 hour a day of listening and speaking. So we focus on listening and speaking only one part, and 2 parts, so twice as much on reading, writing, and grammar. And we integrate those skills. So what that means is that if I give a student a reading about Abraham Lincoln, then we're going to study the vocabulary from the Abraham Lincoln reading, and then we're going to write, not necessarily about Abraham Lincoln, but we're going to write something level appropriate with some theme. Maybe the theme would be leadership. We might talk about why was Abraham Lincoln a great leader. That might be our discussion. Then we would study the vocabulary, and then I would ask the students to write, what makes a great leader? So in a way, we're teaching 2 skills together. And then grammar fits sometimes with the reading and writing, and grammar also just has to be its own thing. So I know as the teacher, these students need to learn this grammar, this grammar, this grammar. So we might do grammar in a separate time period. Listening and speaking class is the same. It's integrated, which means that when we teach listening and speaking, often we start with the listening. We listen to something. For example, do you know about TED Talks? Yes. So TED Talks are really charismatic, great speakers. They're not really well organized as speeches. If you use TED Talks, often it's hard to find the organization of the TED Talk, but they can be interesting for just one little part, one little piece. If you want students to practice their listening skills, take notes about something that someone has talked about, and they're kind of fun to watch, and then it's a break from students watching you. And then after they take notes, listen, then we might discuss some critical part, a question or an idea that came from the TED Talk. So in other words, listening leads to speaking, and reading leads to vocabulary and writing and possibly grammar. That's my context. So I just need you to know that sometimes if I say something that doesn't fit, it might be because of that integrated context. All right, I want to talk about one more thing before I get started on student engagement tips. So I have this kind of specialty of using drama, but that doesn't mean I use drama all the time. I think of drama as the spice. For example, you have this soup. I think eat it for maybe breakfast and lunch. It's nombon. Yes. Okay. So it's always got the soup. It's always got the rice noodles, right? Maybe some vegetables. Meat?
Yes.
Always meat. Okay, so always the rice or the noodles, the rice noodles, and always the meat. Okay? So that's most important, right? That's the reading and writing for me. And then the vegetables, you have to have vegetables, speaking and listening. But then you can put some lime, and you can put some sugar and salt and chilies. But you don't have to. But it's kind of boring if you don't, right? That's the drama. You sprinkle it in sometimes. Maybe at the end of the week, maybe at the beginning of the week, maybe at the beginning of the quarter, maybe at the end of the quarter, you sprinkle it in when it fits. I'm actually a very traditional teacher. I make my students work really hard on reading and writing and grammar and speaking and listening. But sometimes they need a break from that. And so that's when I use the drama. And it's just a way that I can work. Every teacher has some special skills. Some of you have totally different skills. You're great storytellers. I'm not a very good storyteller. Some of you tell wonderful, funny jokes. That's your spice. Some of you are so sweet with your students, so you reach their heart. That's your spice. I think it's good for teachers to think about as we grow in our profession, what is special about us that we can share with our students. But the big job, the most important job, is that we walk into the classroom and we have an objective. Today, I need my students to learn how to read more quickly. And we're going to do timed reading. Or today, we need to work on academic vocabulary from the reading we did yesterday. And we're going to do it this way, this way, this way. Okay, that's my intro. Now, yes, please ask questions. Yes, I'm the teacher.
And writing, you teach.
Yes.
Okay, but in Brazil, not like that.
Yes.
Philippines, somewhere, we've got 3 teachers, teach grammar and writing, teach social and reading, and listening and speaking. It is the example. Yes, this is very different.
Yes, it is very different.
So, can you tell me that you teach depend on the course book, or you teach something that you select from somewhere in order to improve English for students?
So, the first part of your comment, yes, that is helpful for me to know. That a teacher would teach grammar and writing.
Yes.
And that would be their specialty. They would not teach the same students than listening and speaking. Another teacher would teach listening and speaking. Is that my understanding? That is correct?
No, suppose that, no, I can tell you that one class, okay, we got 3 teachers. One class, 20 students.
One class of students,
Yes.
not in one classroom.
Yes, class A.
Okay.
Okay, we depend on schedule, we devise schedule for teaching. So suppose that Monday, we teach grammar and writing. It is the one teacher. And Tuesday, teach social and reading. It is another teacher. And Wednesday, it is speaking, listening, it is explanatory.
Yes.
So this is the schedule that we order like that. See? So now, the question is that you teach the same us or not, because by now you just teach, you just show me that you just pick something. For example, you teach drama 1 week, at the end or maybe at the beginning. And because you want student to be fun, have to be fun like that. Okay, but we teach depend on schedule.
Yes.
Depend on lesson plan.
Yes.
So how about you? In the same us or not? This question.
It's actually somewhat similar. So every quarter, I will teach one group of students reading and writing and grammar. And I don't teach those same students listening and speaking. I teach another group. So each college student has two teachers. They have their reading, writing, and grammar teacher, and they have their listening and speaking teacher. It's not the same person. In your case, you're teaching high school, so they have more classes and they have 3 different English teachers. To the second part of your question, the drama, yes, it's not an objective, it's a tool. So in other words, if I'm thinking vocabulary, we have a vocabulary list we need to cover from our reading. We have studied it, talked about it, the students have done homework on vocabulary. Now I want the students to expand. I will give them maybe a little skit, a little play with the vocabulary word in it. That's the way the drama becomes one part of the lesson plan, usually the last part. That is my choice. Another teacher would do something different. Another teacher might do a contest with the vocabulary. Have I answered?
This kind of the curriculum that you have.
Yes. Yes, this is a description of something that is different because I'm a college instructor and I have more academic freedom to make different choices. But I must use my texts. I choose texts every quarter, and I must follow the master plan of what objectives my students must write 5 paragraphs through the quarter. They must read 10 different readings, and I must give 3 reading tests, that kind of thing.
Okay, so another question is, you just said that TED Talk is also kind of group study. So this is kind of that you put it in the curriculum or teaching or not?
So
because
yes.
right now we create the TED Talk course. I mean the book that we got from the TED Talk, the lyric. I mean that the lyric from TED Talk, and we prepare exercise for students to get them to basically. So this kind of a group that we prepare already. So I mean that you do the same way or not when you teach the student the TED Talk?
I think I do. Are you buying a book, a published book with TED Talks, or are you choosing your own?
No, we I mean that we quote some TED Talk related to our country and from the YouTube.
Yes.
And then after that we create the exercise. Okay, exercise so that the student can do exercise listening to the TED Talk voice video, and then after that the student can do exercise. This is kind of the handout. It's kind of handout, but we combine together into the.
Yes, yes, yes. That's what I do too. Yes. I choose many of my own materials with TED Talks because I don't want to use TED Talks every single day. I choose different things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking that question. So I'm going to go ahead and start with student engagement tips, and I am going to stop after each slide and ask you if you have questions. Okay? So I was very interested to hear that the CAN TESOL theme this year was teachers as students, and Mr. Ticha suggested that we try to use that as a theme. But I also looked at the theme of TESOL International, which is a meeting I go to. And could we go to that link, please? The CAN TESOL link? Yeah, the second one. Not the CAN TESOL link, the TESOL link. It's already up on the internet, yeah. Can you go up to show this? I'd like to see this part.
It's not clear.
Up to the top. There we go. So for this year's TESOL, that's the one that I sometimes go to.
This is principle.
Not in my state, but in the
principle for
country. They are talking
Explore
this
teaching
year about
methods.
6 principles for exemplary teaching of English learners. And I looked at this in November or December, and I thought, oh, that's a good list. I like that list. And then I forgot about it. So let's look at their picture. So now if we can go up a little bit. There's a picture. I don't know if you can see that very well. I have it on my slide. Maybe that's hard to read. Let's go to the list just written. If you go up, here we go. So this is the list. They have 6 principles. Principle 1, know your learners. Principle 2, create conditions for language learning. Principle 3, design high quality lessons.